a lot of that has been working with Rebecca from Tap Collective. And she's been really, really brilliant to work with, actually, because she's probably pushed me more than any other artist, where I'll have got a mix to a certain stage and I'll be like, yeah, I'm kind of happy with that. And she'll be like, no. And she'll come in and she'll sort of like, we'll go through a million stems. Like, our projects have maxed out the Pro Tools limit quite a few times. And we'll go in on every single stem and do volume automation and like,
Wow.
I call it massaging the mix. I do a lot of like what we call massaging the mix, where you, just spend a lot of time doing tiny, tiny little tweaks, and then you go back and listen to it and you're like, yeah, it's a lot better. And I did a lot of that with her, which I've now taken on to every other artist that I've worked with, where I'll really sit down and spend a long time with each stem thinking, how can I get this stem to flourish if it needs to flourish, or to kind of just blend in if it needs to blend in. And I think working with a violinist particularly has really helped with that, because she's so tapped into, excuse the pun, so tapped into all of the harmonies that need to build that she's taught me how to really, really listen to every line, I guess. So that's probably been the most useful to creating ambient music that sounds very, very rich and very, very balanced, and in a particular space if it needs to be in a particular space.
Wow. Yeah,
So
automation
that's
seems to be a lot of secret sauce with strings, like I think
definitely.
maybe I'm too reliant on the artists. And when I'm mixing strings, like maybe I'm too reliant on like the mix feedback, because I'll kind of just balance it out and get it to sound like where it goes, and then people will tell me, oh no, it needs to raise it there, because I'm not necessarily as in tune with that. Maybe you need to like really work one-on-one with like a string arranger to kind of fully understand the ins and outs.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's what I was like before I worked with her. I was kind of just like, yeah, you can kind of hear everything. There's some violins, it sounds all right. And then, working with somebody who's so in tune to that particular part. And then she would lean on me more for the rest of the arrangement or the rest of the instruments, because I guess that was probably more my area of expertise at that time. But anything violin-wise, I went through with her. And then, like even on Hanekiv's record, Becca actually came and played on one of the songs, and Johanna had written about 8 different strings lines, I think. And so when I went in to mix that, I could sort of, even though it was Johanna's composition, I kind of, because it was Becca's playing and I knew her playing so well, I could go in and really shape the piece a lot better, I think, than if I'd just gone in blind before I'd ever worked with Becca.
Wow, that's so cool. Yeah, automation for the win. Yeah, I'd love to. It's interesting, like the whole automation thing, and I guess how that relates to your gain staging and how you have things organized. I'd love to hear about a little bit about how your mix is organized. Like how do you organize your mixes, and how do you kind of get all that automation driving into, like, I don't know. Just walk me through your approach to mixing, I guess.
My approach,
Roundabout way to get there.
The general, like, sort of top-down approach, which I think a lot of people have, where they you've everything
stereo
routed
bus
to buses that then's going up to your mix bus. So I'll have like a master bus at the top, and then the mix bus, and I'll have all the ref mixers at the top that I can like A/B against quite quickly in Pro Tools. I use Pro Tools pretty much for everything. And then I do a lot of like bus mixing, I guess. But if I'm doing automation, particularly with anything ambient, then I'll go in, or even like vocal harmonies and stuff, I'll go in with automation on every single individual stem. And then, but maybe less so with like drums, for example. I wouldn't, unless maybe I'll like automate the snare or something like that. But I think less so with drums, and that's more like bus mixing. That's generally how I do it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, are you?
And then I'll have.
Are you compressing Are you compressing strings? Like, do you compress them and then do you kind of automate into the compression, or are you kind of like compressing each individual like violin part, and so you're not worried about it once you're automating it? Does that make sense?
Oh no,
I feel like
I guess
I feel
I
like you
am
could really
mixing.
you could really like chase your tail with these things,
Yeah, you can, and I have done for sure. So, but and every
Speaking
single
from
mix I've done
personal
is definitely
experience,
different.
also. Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah. Obviously, every mix I've done is a little bit different as well, even in terms of structure. And I learn a little bit each time. Like, oh, I'm not going to route things this way next time. But I've actually gone off compression a little bit recently. Obviously, I compress quite a lot, but I think I used to a lot because I was like, this is what you have to do. You have to compress audio. And I think now I definitely don't compress strings individually. I think I'll probably put a bus compressor on them all. And same with brass. I don't really compress brass anymore. And vocals I never compress on the way in, whereas I used to all the time. But I'll compress a lot in the mix afterwards. But I think tonally I like a lot what compression does, but I think I've really gone off the squished compression sound that you get with a lot of audio. Yeah.
You're like gentle.
Yeah, gentle. And I just like hearing dynamic range of things and like making stuff a bit more alive and a bit more bouncy and if it needs it. So I think I'll use compressors definitely a lot more for tone at the moment rather than dynamic control too much. Obviously, if it's a vocal that's very, very dynamic in range, I still think I automate more. Yeah, I'm much more into like clip gain, gaining everything to be a bit better, or just fader riding.
Yeah,
than compression for that at the moment.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I find that it's interesting you say it that way. Like, you use compression for the tone and you use the automation for the balance. I feel like often I'm using compression for balance and then I'm re-EQing to get like, or I guess I'm setting obviously the attack and release, settings, to try to get as close as I want. But then sometimes I'm trying to undo what the compressor does, and then I'll whip out an EQ.
I think that's what I found. Yeah, that's what I found a lot. Is I'll just end up like doing stuff to undo what the compressor's done, and I'll be like, why am I doing this in the first place? Having said that, I do a lot of parallel compression, so maybe that's what I do a little bit more, and maybe again to get the tone, but kind of like to smooth it out, so you've still got the bounce, but it's not as crazy and dynamic range maybe. So yeah, a lot of parallel compression.